What started out kind of as a hobby then became a full-fledged obsession.
Meet Kurt Coble, a professional musician who's putting down his violin and picking up some boxes for a show like no other.
What lives inside of these boxes aren't machines. They're not completely machines, they're not human, but they are alive. And this is a live music project.
It's the P.A.M. Band, and Kurt has only 4 hours to get it set up and rehearsed.
I'm just anxious to get everything out of the boxes. There's no real method to it. It's a little chaotic. You can see it's like a huge jigsaw puzzle. They may not look so pretty, but they do what they need to do. I should have been wearing my gloves all along.
As a pro violinist, he has to protect his hands.
The past 17 years, I've been working at Phantom of the Opera in Broadway. I guess the robot project started many years ago. I was writing music for a children's theater company. I built this thing called a puppet, which was a puppet that by pulling a string, it would make the bow go back and forth, and then I would pull other strings that would fret the fingerboard. Judging by the expression of the kids, I knew I was onto something. And so that was the beginning of the P.A.M. Band, the Partially Artificial Musicians. Now I remember how it goes. You've heard people say that the violin is the most difficult instrument to learn. Well, it's also the most difficult instrument to mechanize. This violin is the 7th generation violin. Everything has to be so precise because things have just a very little bit of room. And if they're slightly out of adjustment, they don't work or they don't sound good. So I'm constantly tweaking everything to find that optimum spot where it just, the strings vibrate, the fingers touch in the right place in the right way. Because remember, as people, we have an incredible amount of control and sophistication over very simple movements. These things can only do one thing. And now comes the fun part where everything gets plugged in. There's probably several hundred feet of wire throughout the whole thing.
With all systems go, it's time to bring in the leading lady.
Well, Rosie, as you know, is the only member of the band that has a female persona. This is the only synthesizer in the band, so there's a lot of grumbling among the other band members, and they constantly remind me that it kind of violates the prime directive, which is only to use naturally occurring acoustical sound, but I make this one exception.
Ladies and gentlemen, meet the P.A.M. Band. A 5, 6, 7, 8.
The P.A.M. Band, they all are synchronized together. Basically, all we're doing is controlling voltage, turning things on and off, switches. It runs from reading a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet just has each instruction on each line of code, and it can read about 20 lines of code per second. And when the computer sends the instruction to the microchip, and by telling what solenoids to be depressed at what point in time, creates the pitch rhythm continuum that we call music. If everything's adjusted properly and it's put in position, then it sounds perfect every time. It's like playing a record. You know, it's exactly the same. People's reactions run the whole gamut. There's my colleagues that are musicians that just won't be seen talking to me in public anymore. The visual artists that just think that this is incredible. There's people like my relatives that think I'm losing my mind. And then there's kids that just have such a great time.
Where he goes next with this kit is anybody's guess.
All I wanted to do was play Mary Had a Little Lamb with a robot violin. I thought that would have been a great thing. It took off and sort of developed a life of its own.